Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote-unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
And there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
World.
Oh, good for you.
I have to apologize.
One of the hottest.
Hello, and welcome back to The Reheat, a podcast that re-examines the spiciest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks, how would we react to the same events if they'd transpired today? I'm your co-host, Sarah Sahagian.
I'm your other co-host, Sadaf Hassan, and this week we are heading back to the Upper East Side, not for Gossip Girl. And, you know, it might even be the West Village, depending on who you ask, because we are talking about Sex and the City, a show that was all about women, sex, and friendship, and it shaped a generation, I would even say a few generations, and continues to spark heated debates in so many group chats, including many of mine. We're going to discuss just how groundbreaking it all was as a show, shamelessly representing women's pleasure, and of course, the Kim Cattrall of it all. But first, Sarah, tell me, do you love Satsy as much as I do? And how has your love for it evolved over the years?
So I started watching it in high school, as I think everyone secretly did. It was interesting because it was the first time I'd seen women on TV who were in their 30s who were not married or mothers, like a critical mass of them, like a bunch of them, not just like one character. And they were all hanging out. And it was also the first time I'd seen women who dressed like that. And we can talk about that too, about how it kind of normalized something that was really unrealistic. But it is a fantasy, willful suspension of disbelief. So
yes,
I loved it as a story about women. I did honestly relate to the archetypes, and I know that it is reductionist to be like, whose personality are you? But I actually felt like it was kind of useful. This was sort of remember the Sorting Hat with Harry Potter? People are like, which house are you? This was kind of something that women in their 20s and their 30s had to be like, what type of personality are you? I felt like it gave women a way to talk about themselves, a way to view themselves. It normalized being single over the age of like 28, which we kind of forget even 30 years ago was pretty radical, right? I mean, there were plenty of women who were single over the age of 28, but in pop culture, that was seen as pitiable. It was like an emergency. What about you? When did you discover it?
I think it was also in high school. I think I definitely snuck episodes, but it was like on TBS when they had them heavily censored. And I didn't know for years I was watching censored episodes of Sex and the City, which greatly reduces the episode, like the length of it. They were like
so
15-minute little speedy things, but I loved it. And then when I got older, I watched it all the way through, not censored. That was a pleasure. I think I probably rewatched it, like maybe 5 times now. There's something about Sex and the City that does make it very much a generational watch, but I do feel like my feelings towards it have changed every time I've watched it. I love it all the same, but I'll relate to a different character or I'll feel comforted by a different element. And these days, it's definitely how they were single for so many years and it wasn't a weird thing necessarily, but they would still go to brunch the next day and talk about it and be like, okay, what about this guy? Or is this thing weird that he did in bed? Or like, is it weird that he licked my whole face when he kissed me? Like all these kinds of random things. It's surprising how many of those things can actually happen in real life and that now I've actually experienced. When I was younger, I was like, oh God, none of this could possibly happen. Some of it does happen, guys. It's wild.
And it was definitely very based on the dating lives of the writers, right? In the writer's room.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's some exaggeration, but I think some of it was, ripped straight from a blind date that someone had that didn't go well.
Had to have. As some of you know, the series was based on the Candace Bushnell novels. Candace Bushnell being a little bit of a New York socialite, and she must have made like a ton off of the series, I have to assume. But one special thing about the series is, it had the same production team throughout the years, which I think is why it remained so consistent. Like I would say all the way to the end. It's not a Gilmore Girls. It's not one of those shows. You can still stand by it throughout. Big vehicle for Darren Star, for Michael Patrick King. I feel like that's part of the reason it's worked so well, that it's been the same team. Candace Bushnell has also said she definitely based some of these women off real life New York socialites. If you watch Real Housewives of New York, Dorinda is one of them who allegedly she borrowed quite a bit. That said, there are problematic elements, but we will get into it. So it's easy to roll your eyes at this show now, and I think a lot of people have. There's endless pieces out there about how it doesn't work in 2025. It was really problematic. There's the puns. Feel about those as you will. I will say Sarah Jessica Parker saying those puns doesn't make them so bad, but there were quite a few. There's the exceeding whiteness. We didn't have many characters of color on that show. Carrie's character made $4 a word at Vogue, which is wild now. That would never happen. I wish. Me and Sarah wish. $40,000 in shoes and no savings. Like, this is just impractical in every way. But when it premiered in 1998, it was doing something no other show was. It centered women's pleasure. Not as a subplot or a cautionary tale, but as the story, which honestly is still pretty groundbreaking. It wasn't a show just about dating. It was a show about wanting, about claiming desire. And sometimes making total fools of yourself in pursuit of it. Also, side note, the men they were after weren't all like the most stunning men that you've ever seen, which I also found was really relatable. Okay, so let's examine Carrie a little bit, because these days a lot of people like to write her off as completely unlikable, a bitch. I mean, she was the other woman for quite a long period. She wasn't the kindest to Aiden, one of her love interests. She may not have been like the best friend to all the women. She was messy. She was selfish. She was vulnerable. She was also stylish. She got to be the main character.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
And the show didn't just let her exist, it celebrated her, which I think is really interesting. And even when she cheated or she gaslit Aiden or she chased Big like he was a prize and not a massive red flag, the show gave her grace and space. Something male characters have always been afforded, but women rarely were. I know in retrospect, people have turned on Carrie the way they did on Rary Gilmore, which I also have issues with. But as far as I'm concerned, a good female character doesn't have to be a perfect angel, right? Like, she can be complicated, she can be messy. That doesn't mean that she shouldn't be lead or not likable. I like characters like that. But then there were the others. So let's get into those. So Samantha gave us the image of a woman over 40 who loved sex, didn't apologize for it. She might have been the funniest character on the show.
I was once told I wouldn't be able to get backstage to see Mick Jagger. Well, I did get backstage. And I blew him.
Charlotte made being traditional feel radical a little bit in its own right. It was fascinating. I can never forget her saying how long she's been waiting. Where is he? That quote is forever jammed in my brain.
I know. I've been dating since I was 15. I'm exhausted. Where is he?
And then you have Miranda, who's a career woman who didn't have to choose between ambition and love.
Last night we were in the dining room and we were laughing, and all of a sudden I looked over at him and I realized we belong together.
Oh, Miranda.
Yeah. So I picked a huge fight and threw him out of my apartment.
Good thinking.
She was also kind of radical in a way, because we got to give her a platform. Normally, she'd be considered a little bit of a shrew in some ways.
I told you I'd do my best never to hurt you again, and I meant it.
Right. Your best.
Samantha, I love you.
I love you too, Richard. But I love me more.
That wasn't just a good line. That was a thesis statement, one that landed in the hearts of women who were, for maybe the first time, seeing a version of themselves on screen that wasn't defined by their relationship to men. She's become incredibly important to me as I've gotten older and realized I don't really have much interest in marriage or kids or cohabitating. I can just choose myself. I can choose casual sex, and that's okay. It's also kind of radical. But of course, Sex and the City was never representative of all women. We got to touch on this. As I mentioned mentioned it was painfully white. It was painfully thin, very cis, very straight. In that way, it was a revolution, sure, but it left a lot of people out. But here's the thing, and this is the great irony of this show. It broke ground for all the shows that came after it. So I'm talking Insecure, Girls, Broad City, Fleabag, I May Destroy You,
The L Word.
Gum, The L Word, great example. If these were all shows that explored women's inner lives, their bodies, if Satsy wasn't intersectional, it was at least foundational. And I know that's a big statement, but I think both things can even be true. Sarah, what is your take on this? Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that it was a departure for the time, right? We have to judge it by the standards of the time. And before that, the only other show I could think of that centered around women and had an ensemble cast was Sisters, right? Like that was actually, and actually Sisters is an underrated show because it did show the sisters kind of putting themselves first. A lot of them got divorced or one used a surrogate at a time when, I mean, I think that was not really something you saw a lot on TV, but that aside there wasn't a lot. And yeah, they're trying to get greenlit. And I don't know if it ever occurred to them to make the show more diverse. And I'm not sure. They certainly have with the new version and just like that. But I don't know if that's because of years of it. I don't know if they were succumbing to the pressure or if this was always the show they wanted to make that they just couldn't get greenlit at that time. It's hard to know. And it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? It's probably somewhere in the middle that they got certain notes. I mean, one thing that always struck me is that the show did explore queerness in a way that was very homophobic, right? Like the show was very homophobic. And so it almost would have been better if they hadn't explored queerness at all, because their exploration of queerness made queerness, like, it just seemed so other, right? Like it was something that just they didn't interact with. You either had somebody like Anthony, who is a better character now in the sequel series. Like he is developed, but he just really seemed like a caricature of a gay man in New York. And that's not a criticism of the actor. The actor is really good at delivering a line, but he wasn't developed sufficiently. Or you had, when they dealt with like, queer women, it just always ended up seeming like ridiculous. It was played for laughs, right? Like Samantha's queer for like a couple episodes. And then she just gets so sick of it so quickly and is never queer again. Like that, it's just like she's 100% straight from now on.
It was so unfortunate because for a second I was like, wow, we're going to do this. And they seemed to be approaching it from the beginning, that arc that Samantha had very beautifully, where they were showing what sex was like. She was discovering pleasure in a new way by someone who really understood her body. And then, you're right. They just completely unraveled it for jokes. I didn't get it. And they also didn't seem to believe in bisexuality, which was another big confusion. And there's that episode where Alanis Morissette and Carrie's dating the man who, I can't remember his name, but he plays tag in Friends. And she realizes he might be bi, and that completely turns her off. And the way the episode is structured, you're supposed to be like, go Carrie, leave him behind. And it's like, no, why?
He's so handsome. Like, who leaves that man behind?
Handsome.
Like, that's one of her, that might be her most handsome boyfriend, I have to say. Like, I never found Big attractive, and I never found Aiden attractive. Like, Tag was the hottest.
I was attracted to both of those men, but I understand, and I will give that to you. But it was really odd. And I mean, even when we take a look at when there was maybe one episode that I recall where they also had any significant Black characters. All of a sudden, Samantha had a Black friend who we had never seen before and we never see again. And she's presented as very aggressive, loud, angry. She even becomes violent at some point. There's wig pulling. Every stereotype you can think of, they threw it in. And she starts sleeping with that character's brother. And of course, the big joke there is, does he have a big dick? It's so ridiculous. So absolutely, there are quite a few episodes when you watch them now, you just don't want to watch them because they're so horrific when it comes to that. I have to say, before I was praising how great it is that they kept this really great and consistent production team, but part of the problem, of course, is that it was so white. I don't believe there were any POC on there. Probably, I mean, it's interesting too, though, because it was led led by two gay men. So I'm surprised that it had the stance that it did, but I suppose that was just the more accessible stance. People weren't in a place yet, maybe, to view gay men as anything other than big, larger than life stereotypes, like the two gays that we had in the show, who also played these women's best friends, which is also complicated in its own right. It needed work. It needed work. Sarah, we touched on this earlier, but I have to ask you, are you a Carrie, Samantha, Miranda, or Charlotte? I don't think we can have this episode without discussing this.
Yeah, we have to. I would say at the time it aired, I was a Miranda, and now I'm a Charlotte, because the way the characters have evolved, I actually really identify with Charlotte in and just like that, like her working mom storyline. I love when she yells at her husband and daughters, "I was a person before you!"
Yeah.
She's very quotable. And her frustration is very realistic because she's doing intensive mothering, but she's trying to work. And she also resents the intensive mothering and has self-awareness about it, but she knows she can't stop, right? Like there's a recent episode in this current season that's airing right now where she discovers that everyone's using these university admissions counselors and they're not supposed to, but they are. And she knows she shouldn't because she has decided not to go off the deep end with this. And
yes,
Lily reminds her and she said, well, I've decided the deep end is where we need to be, right? Because everyone else is doing it. And I really like the self-awareness of that character. I think that she's a really great commentary on motherhood, of how you know it's crazy, but you have to do it anyway, or you feel you have to do it anyway. And I've always felt that, honestly, I think Kristen Davis is one of the strongest performers, and I felt like that character had the most dimension and had the best, I felt like she had the best evolution, like she evolved the most as a character. But I would say at the time I watched it, I thought I was a Miranda. And now I still think Miranda's a great character. I just don't relate to her as much now. And I think in part it's because like her son has grown up, so they don't really portray her as a working mother, and we don't really get to see that from her. But you know, you're looking for where you are right now. And so the character you change, the character you relate to can change. Like there were times when I related to Carrie more. You know, when I was single in my days, there were times when I don't think I ever related to Samantha, but I appreciated her. But I have heard that from women I know, where sometimes the person who's your avatar can change depending on the time of life you're in. What about you?
I had Carrie for a while for sure, like especially when I just started going into journalism, and I was often like the single friend, and I would feel that a lot. And then I definitely was Miranda, who in the original series I loved so much because I feel like she didn't get enough credit actually in the original run. She was so fantastic. I have a lot of Miranda friends, actually, which it's probably says a lot about me, says a lot about them, but I love having Mirandas around me. These days, I actually feel more connected to Samantha. And it's interesting. I didn't completely understand her in the early days when I watched the show. Like, I loved her. I was such a fan of hers. She was so funny. But she seemed a little too larger than life, like almost like she couldn't possibly be real. I remember, spoiler alert, although really you should have watched it by now, but get to it. But I remember in the original run when I watched it and she decides not to stick with her beautiful, beautiful man, Smith, at the end. And I just didn't get it. And I was like, what? He's so great. Why would you not want to be with him? Why would you choose yourself, as she says in that infamous line? Now, all these years later, I totally get it. I so deeply understand. And that's really beautiful and interesting. Like to see a show having layers in that way that it can reveal to you over time. I never thought I would be a Samantha, but I really, really connect with her now. And actually, rewatching the show now, it's really nice and validating to watch her. She's so dedicated to her career, which I think people forget. And the sex comes after. It's because she's so empowered in these ways that are individual and so independent. And then she gets to enjoy all those other parts of her life. God, I love that woman.
You're getting engaged.
I threw up. I saw the ring and I threw up. That's not normal.
That's my reaction to marriage.
Time for a break. Take this time, think about who you were. Tell us, get in touch. We want to know. I feel like we probably have a lot of Mirandas who listen to our show.
Probably a lot of Mirandas. Yeah. I have always said that Miranda and Charlotte are very similar to each other personality-wise, which is why in the original series they hang out a lot independently, I would say. Right? Like, and I think it's because they have a lot in common. And as they've gotten older, I think it becomes more and more obvious how much they have in common. Right? They're both very kind of traditionally academic and thoughtful. Like their worldview is very similar. Their priorities are a little bit shifted.
Yeah.
We always forget how ambitious Charlotte was, right? Like she was at the beginning, she kind of has the most impressive job. She's running
She
an
does.
amazing art gallery in her early 30s, right? And probably making the most money, honestly, because she works on commission. And then she applies, which is something a lot of women did in the 90s, that same professional zeal to trying to become a mother, which is actually representative of something that was a phenomenon that was happening in New York at the time. Now she is a working mom. So like, I think people forget, they think of Charlotte as this highly traditional character, but she and Miranda at the start are probably the two most professionally ambitious.
Which is wild. I totally agree with you. Okay, let's take that break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, speaking of Samantha, we got to get to the crucial mess here that everybody's been talking about for years and years and years. The feud between Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker. This is one of the most iconic in pop culture history, which is wild because they haven't really traded direct barbs, but let's get into it. So it reveals a lot about power, and I would say how we treat women who don't play along. The tension had started on this, allegedly had started on the set. So Kim was older, more experienced. However, she was paid less, but so were Cynthia Nixon and Kristen Davis. They all made more progressively as the show went along. SJP, of course, is the lead and quite a big star at that point, was ranking in, I think, well over 1 million per episode at this point. Others say that Kim didn't get along with the other women. Rumors have flown for years, and although all of the women did reunite for 2 sequels, Kim refused to return to a potential 3rd film, which actually led to it getting scrapped because they didn't want to make it without her. But here's the thing. She didn't want to do it because she saw the script, which included the death of Big and Miranda's teenage son sending Samantha nudes. Both of these plot lines are awful, especially that second one.
Yeah, the second one's bad.
It's pretty bad. Now, as we know, again, spoiler alert, Big does die in the sequel series, and just like that. So they eventually went for it. I do still feel that it was a little ridiculous of a plotline and a bit desperate, but it kind of works out in the show. But I understand Kim's feelings that they were kind of jumping the shark, and I think she was smart to say that. I think it was fair for her to decline and turn it down. The sequels weren't great. I love them because I love these women, but they weren't great. And the series, as we're going to get into, is really not great. So I don't know that she made a bad decision here, right? Here's the thing, though. A ton of fan pressure, years of fan pressure, and probably a massive paycheck eventually from HBO came. So Kim did do a quick off-screen cameo in the new series. She literally just does like a phone call from Paris. So she doesn't even directly speak with SJP. She probably spoke with the producer. She got to do it her own way. And again, I'm assuming got paid a ton of money. So go, Kim.
Good for her.
But here's the thing. Let's get into the drama. Let's settle this. So recently, Kim said she and Sarah Jessica were never friends, only colleagues, and that Sarah could have been nicer to her during their time working together on the show's original run. She also accused her of exploiting Kim's brother's death to improve her own public image. So here's the thing. I'm not really sure what she was implying here. I think she was referring to how she previously said SJP never checked in on her after the death of her brother, and that when SJP did check in, as she offered her, quote, love and support, and it was in a comment on Instagram. So I think Kim is essentially saying, you didn't need to comment it on Instagram, you could have called me. Although I think Sarah has implied she did call her, so there's a lot of confusion here. I don't know. It's messy. And Kim said she doesn't need Sarah's love and support. So, you know, it's a little bitchy. Here's the thing. These women are colleagues. It's not normal for colleagues to hang out and be best friends. We normal people don't really do that. I mean, sometimes you do, but not all the time. So I'm going to give Kim points there. She's also definitely right about Satsy content being a bit shit after the original series.
Yeah.
It's not crazy she would want to have a career beyond Samantha. Like, that's not wild. I also think it's weird how aggressive people became about bringing her back. If she's saying she doesn't want to do it, let's let her live and move on. So on the other side of it, SJP has a super lengthy list of people in and out of Hollywood who've raved about her kindness. They say she's so friendly. Kim kind of has the opposite. I wouldn't say she has a lengthy list of haters, but there's been quite a few reports. Still, I feel like SJP is the one who got villainized here. I don't know. I feel like it's all a bit messy. I think when there's smoke, there is fire. But Sarah, tell me, whose side are you on with all of this?
What's happening? I don't really have an opinion because I can't figure out what's gone wrong.
That's fair.
Having said that, some of Kim's complaints, while I love Kim and I want to be on her side, some of them sound a little unhinged.
They do.
Like
They
actually
do.
getting super mad at someone for leaving a comment on your social media saying sending love and support. Like I do that all the time with people. So I don't really know why it's that scandalous in her mind. Let's just say, like, you don't always get along with your colleagues. Sometimes when you have to work with people you don't get along with for a really long time, you can get quite triggered by having to interact with them at all. I don't know why we expect them to be friends. Like, I mean, Kristen Davis and Cynthia Nixon are actually friends. And I think those are the only two people from the cast who are actually close, right? They are close. They're in each other's lives. That's statistically kind of accurate where, you know, in any workplace, a couple people will probably become real lifelong friends and then everyone else will just be cordial. So I think that is fine and says was probably a normal workplace. But I do, as much as like I want to be on team Kim Cattrall, and I am on team Kim Cattrall in terms of not making more, because you don't have to make Drek, right? Like at a certain point you can say no, right? I'm not going to.
Yes.
In terms of the rivalry with Sarah Jessica Parker, I can't be on her side because I don't understand what she thinks Sarah Jessica did.
I know. I don't think anybody does. And it never makes sense when she seems to explain it. I was trying to be as diplomatic as possible. Thank you for being direct, Sarah. Yes, it's very unhinged. I don't know what she's after. It ends up making me assume that there's a little bit of jealousy here. I mean, of course, SJP was the star of this show from beginning to end. And if they keep it going, she's still going to be the star. That is the case. Although I don't know, I feel like the other women have also kind of leveled up in a lot of ways too. But I think I have to assume that's part of the hump on her back. I don't get it. And here's the sad thing. And I'm going to say this. I feel bad saying this. Kim has not been able to have much of a career beyond Sex and the City. She's certainly tried. She's fantastic, but nothing has really stuck. So it seems like Samantha Jones is always going to be the one that she's known for. That doesn't mean I'm not saying she should go back to it for that reason. But someone like Sarah Jessica Parker has had a massive career beyond the show.
Yeah.
She could still probably have one if she wanted. So has Cynthia Nixon. It's complicated that way. If you take a look at Kristen Davis, she even has a podcast about Sex and the City now where she delves deeper into Charlotte. She knows that she also doesn't have a whole career outside of Sex and the City and she's making it work for her. I think Kim is rebelling a little bit about that. She hates that. She can't stand it. And maybe that's part of it.
Kristen Davis, I have to say, I respect her self-awareness so much. Like,
me too.
She is always classy. When Sex and the City comes up, she sounds so grateful. She is somebody who she's happy with her lot in life, and she's accomplished a lot, right? She's very privileged to be where she is. I have to say, I really love her. I want to be more like her. Like, of all the people in this cast, she's the one where I'm always like, how can I be more like Kristen Davis? Like, as a human being, she seems happy and gracious and classy and professional, and just, we should all be like that. And honestly, even though Just Like That is not good, she's doing some great work on it. And so I feel bad for her. The show's not great, but she's really doing some of her best work.
All four of them are great actors. I stand by that. They're all really great. I wouldn't say SJP is the best. They're all great. I do love SJP a lot. Kim, I'm sorry to say, I think you kind of lose this battle. I think that settles it. Even if we're saying we don't want to pick a side, I think there's a side here.
Just people will ask her, like, what did she do wrong? What could she have done differently? And she never really can give a concrete answer. I mean, I've heard her say Sarah Jessica Parker could have been kinder, but then when Sarah Jessica Parker tries to be kind, she gets rebuffed. So I don't know, man. If I were Sarah Jessica Parker and I was like a busy person who has a career and 3 kids, she has a lot of kids, like, and a colleague just was constantly being mean to me, I also probably wouldn't engage with them very often.
No, and you know what? I think it speaks a lot that Sarah Jessica Parker also never really addresses this. Like, she has a couple times here and there, but she does it very briefly, and she very clearly is not interested in continuing this conversation. And I think that speaks better to her in this so-called feud that I think Kim is having all by herself.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, have you ever had a rivalry with someone, or you didn't know you had a rivalry? They had a rivalry with you. There was a somebody that I went to high school with, and I'm not going to out her, where I found out after high school she had a rivalry with me and I had no idea. I was like, you need two people to have a rivalry. And I'm not going to name her. And I'm sure she's lovely now. I don't talk. Actually, is she? Most of the people I went to high school with are lovely. I don't even know why I'm saying this. It was just like, have you ever had that happen where someone had a one-sided rivalry with you and you find out and it's so bizarre? And I feel like Sarah Jessica Parker is living that, where it's like, what is this rivalry? I don't even understand.
Yeah, I believe I have, and I completely co-signed this. You know what it reminds me of? I feel like Sex and the City is a little bit of the boy bands of the 90s. You know, like Kim Cattrall feels a little bit like a Justin Timberlake, where they grow older, they move on, and they're like, I don't ever want to talk about that embarrassing part of my past again because I do not associate with it anymore. Whereas the rest of the women are happy to continue on forever, a la the Backstreet Boys. You know, they'll just keep going. They don't mind. So I think it's one of those situations. But I'm sorry, Kim. It was your bread and butter for so long. People love it. I feel like it would be best for her to reframe it as something beautiful. But in so many ways, I don't blame her. She must be so sick of Samantha Jones. Whereas for the rest of us, we're going to love Sam forever.
Yeah. And I remember when she finished the show initially before the movies, she was in that god-awful movie, Ice Princess. But she was giving an interview and she seemed to be genuinely enthusiastic about it because she said, like, I think in her mind, Samantha was a very one-note character, right? The character was always being sexualized. And she said, like, it's nice to have something that I can show my nieces and nephews, right? Like, it's nice to have, like, because in Sex and the City, there's probably not even a single scene where she can show it to young kids because she's always swearing or having sex. And that's part of what makes the character great, right? But I guess if you feel like this, you have to do this every day and it's your whole career and you really want to show a different side of yourself. Like, I do understand playing a highly sexualized character is very difficult. And it's funny because Leighton Meester has said similar things about playing Blair Waldorf, where she's like, looks back on it and she's like, this is so weird. I was playing a teenage girl who was in all these sexual experiences, and it, like, she has complicated feelings about that too. And I think a lot of women, especially maybe intimacy coordinators and all these things, and you're playing a highly sexualized, objectified character, like, sometimes that's got to be fun. But if that's all you do every day, then you are also being objectified, right? As a performer. And is that, I don't know, maybe some people want that, maybe some people don't. I'm not going to judge her if she was like, you know, I kind of got sick of playing this character where I always had to be naked. And so I always had to worry, like, oh, am I bloated today?
That's so fair. That's such a good point. Yeah, I tend to forget that about her character because I love it so much. But yeah, we tend to forget what it's like for these women to actually be inside them all the time. So yeah, clearly there's a lot of fair points to Kim here. You know, make your own choices. I think there's a clear side here, but I definitely have a lot of empathy for her. And I do hope we get to see her in something else again.
Sensitive Skin was good. I'm just putting it out there. That was really well done. That's a great piece of Toronto set art. So everyone should watch that if they can.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I loved Sensitive Skin, and she's so great in it, and it's a completely different beat from Samantha Jones. If you're in Canada, you can watch it on Crave, but please, check it out. Okay, the time has come, very sadly, to discuss The Abomination, that is the Satsy sequel series, and Just Like That. We've touched on a little bit. It's HBO's reboot and rebranding experiment, if you will. It kicked off in 2021 and tried to be everything the original wasn't. So it added a bit of diversity, inclusivity, basically trying to be very aware of its past sins. It also tried to reckon with aging and grief, parenting Gen Zs, as Sarah alluded to, getting canceled, all while still being somehow a comedy. It was a lot. It is a lot. I kind of struggle with it even being more inclusive because I feel like a lot of the time everything tends to feel ham-fisted in. It's a little bit like when they added Jennifer Hudson to one of the sequel movies, and it just felt very much like, here's a Black character, there you go, take it. Like, give it actual relevance. Like, let's see and find a way where this character actually fits in. I don't want to be thrown a little bit of diversity so that I'm satisfied, and I feel like that is something this show really struggles with. And you're right, Sarah, I do like the parenting angles. I feel like that's really worked out pretty well in its favor. are. Even the way that they touch on getting canceled, though, it's very much like an older person being like, I see you kids, I'm trying to relate. And it just doesn't quite work. For example, Che Diaz, an infamous, horrific character we had to suffer through. Yeah, so if you don't know what we're talking about, go check it out. Go watch the series. Che was a non-binary comedian who was dating Miranda, very outspoken, very, how do I put this nicely? Unlikable character.
Yeah, played by Sarah Ramirez, whom I like as a performer. I like them. But yeah, the character's just not well written. And it really felt like they're like, okay, what's trending right now? Let's create a character that embodies this, right? So the writer's room, I know, have often written from their own experience. And I'm wondering if now they're writing from like what they see on social media, not what they've lived.
I think absolutely. And it's interesting because they've also hired younger writers.
Yeah.
They have a more diverse production
they definitely
team
do.
now. I don't get it. And they've got some good writers on there too. It's very odd. It's almost like they're trying so hard that they just keep missing the mark and still trying to keep a little bit of the original charm. It just doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to throw a few other spoilers at you. So if you don't like it, fast forward a few seconds. We discussed this. They not only killed off Big, they also brought back Aiden, which was an interesting choice. And even his storyline now is very odd. He has a teenage son who's, you know, is he even teenager or is he in 20s? I can't remember.
He has three. Some are in their 20s and some are, the youngest is 15.
Okay, and he's not handling Aiden's divorce well. And so Aiden has to go back and be with his son, which means he can't be with Carrie, even though they've just bought a massive house together, which also means she's given up her apartment. Like, it's all these really ridiculous things. They've made Miranda gay, which I don't know if that was, it seems like it was influenced by Cynthia Nixon's real life in some ways, but it also feels very ham-fisted, especially because we had a few episodes in the original where, I suppose one key episode where she kind of thinks about if that might be something she's interested in, and she says no. Of course, it's very realistic that this might be something you reevaluate later in life. It just didn't feel genuine. Her character doesn't feel like her character anymore.
No, that's the thing. Like, when she and Steve ended up together, it felt very genuine. And a lot of fans took issue with this, saying, like, we don't have an issue with you diversifying and telling queer love stories, because that's great. In order to do that, you shouldn't have to sacrifice probably the healthiest love story on the show. Like, Harry and Charlotte are also functional and good. I think the fan favorite couple for a lot of people was definitely Steve and Miranda. So it also was just such a slap in the face to Steve. Like, it's just, now we don't have this character that we love. It also felt weirdly ableist, because around the time she decided she was no longer attracted to him was when he was like no longer, like when he was losing his hearing. And it just, I don't know, like, I just felt really uncomfortable with that storyline and her journey. And just like, why can't it just be like Carrie who realizes she's bisexual? And that's why she was so homophobic for so long, because she was repressed. I don't know, like, that makes more sense to me.
By the way, quick note on that too. Yes, it is wild. Like, Carrie has always been a sex columnist who's also a prude. But that aside, yes, thank you for saying that. That is exactly the issue with this entire new series, I fear. It just doesn't make sense anymore as Miranda. Like, I'm so happy for her to be queer. Wonderful. Odds are high that one of these women would be. But this is not the way to do it. I'm so sad about the Steve bit ending. I also, the way that it played out was so messy and just not good. And it just felt like they were throwing him away after all the work I feel like we all put into that relationship.
That sainted man. And you know what? If they had to do it, why couldn't they just like continue to live together as a family while like they had an open marriage or something? Like,
that would be interesting.
And that would be interesting, right? Because to me, the fact that she's no longer a good life partner for her, even if she realizes she's queer and she wants to have sex with women, that's the ultimate betrayal. Because the whole part of their arc is realizing, like, we're each other's people. You're my person. You're my life partner. So the fact that she can just walk away and not see him on a daily basis was really hard for me to accept. And it's bad writing, because it just didn't feel like, it didn't feel true.
It's awful writing, and non-monogamy is very in right now, dare I say. Like, it would have worked out so beautifully, and it would have been interesting to see them live as kind of like maybe a blended family over time. I love that idea. But yeah, they just didn't take that route. I guess they really just wanted Miranda to be as gay as possible with no other extensions. It's very odd. And then, of course, we don't have Samantha anymore. And I do like what you said about Charlotte, Sarah, and I actually feel like Charlotte is the one who's come out the best out of all of these characters all this time later. However, at the same time, I feel like they also often paint her as kind of stupid.
That's
which
true.
also bothers me, right? Like there's so many moments with wonderful Kristen Davis who has to play almost like a stupid raunchy, not raunchy, but like a dim-witted.
She's the buffoon,
topic.
which makes no sense. It makes no sense that she's the buffoon because we know that she's so good at her job and we know that, you know, she seems to be a good, capable parent and she's married to somebody who's smart and seems to appreciate her. I don't know. Like, I agree with you. I think the reason they do it is because she's the best at kind of that type of humor. Sarah Jessica Parker's funny in a very dry way. Cynthia Nixon can absolutely only be the straight man, ironically, and dry, right? Like, is not funny. And I think they just give her that for comic relief because they have to. And it does a disservice to that character and to that actor. It's not at all fair because, I think she would have to be a really smart person.
Cynthia Nixon is just too smart. Like, you can't have her not play smart. It's so true. But yeah, absolutely. Kristen Davis is the best one to give that shtick to, but I still don't understand why we need the shtick. The other thing that I'm so puzzled by with this show, and I wonder if you've caught it too, Sarah, is the way that they constantly paint these women as old and bumbling now. Like, Miranda is so confused all the time, no matter what she's doing. And in this new career arc, she's just such an idiot, and I don't get it. And then even with Sarah Jessica's, with Carrie, like we just had an episode where she falls and she hurts her back, and we've also seen that before. And when they did that with Miranda in the original series, it was much more beautiful and relatable. And now it just feels like these little slapstick things that are thrown in, but they're constantly reminding us these women are becoming elderly and they don't know anything. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, well, I don't get it.
It's very weird. And it's funny because they don't do that with Seema. And Seema's my favorite character. Seema feels like she is a person in her prime. And she's the same age, right? She's like starting her own business and she's persuasive and compelling and she's by dating, but she's still doing it. And she's very vibrant and stylish and doesn't ever complain about all these things the others are complaining about. So I don't know if she's just very privileged that her, you know, she's not experiencing the symptoms of aging they are. I don't know what they're trying to say with that character, but she seems like the way they portray being in your 50s is the way we normally portray being in your 80s on TV. Like, I would have to say.
You're so right. And I'm so glad you brought her up. She's wonderful. So she's the new, kind of the new Samantha in a way. And she's played by Sarita Choudhury, who is just one of the greatest actors we've ever had. She's wonderful. If you haven't watched Mississippi Masala, get into it. But she's fantastic. She's also beyond gorgeous. My God,
stunning.
she's so hot.
She's stunning.
And she's a wonderful, delicious character. I actually would love for her to even get her own spin-off if they can let her breathe a little bit, I think.
Yes.
And then let's have Charlotte come in like little bits. They brought in other characters as well that I don't think have landed quite as well as she has. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand why those women don't get written off as elderly idiots, but these ones do. It's very unusual. And you know, I just want us to remember how smart, interesting, and powerful they were. Sure, they would make mistakes, but they weren't stupid. I think that's one of the biggest issues here. And there are like a few good moments here and there, as Sarah mentioned earlier. We definitely have them with Kristen Davis's character. Actually, I think whenever we do have really lovely moments that happen in the show, it's because of the great cast and because of their great acting. Like, I think Sarah Jessica has still so many lovely moments, even if they're ridiculous in a bigger picture. She is just so good. Like, I don't think she can do one bad line reading. Maybe I'm a little biased because I love her so much.
She sells some ridiculous stuff, like this week's episode where she wouldn't take her high heels off in her house. Who wears shoes in their house? Like, this is even Charlotte tells her off for that, and Charlotte's like, that's not sanitary, right? Like, why? Who does this? Also, you've hardwood. Are you going to try to damage your own hardwood with your heels? Like, the other thing, what I find interesting is while the portrayal of women in their 50s is nonsensical because they're all portrayed as like incredibly sickly on death's door. But then also they wear heels everywhere. And the idea that they wouldn't wear heels every moment of their lives is so offensive to them. I'm like, the first thing that I did when I hit 35 was I was like, I don't need to wear heels if I'm not going to a wedding. Like, I'm not going to impress you. Like, because heels are not comfortable, right? So I was like, surely they would be wearing heels a little less, right? Surely Carrie would have invested in a pair of ballet flats by this era in her life. What, come on, be kinder to yourself. So that's the thing that really doesn't make sense. And like this whole week's episode was centered on her downstairs neighbor being angry that she was always making noise with heels on her hardwood floor. And I'm like, this woman is in her 50s. Be mature. Just be like, you know what? I will wear slippers in my house. You're right. Like, what is this show?
I know. Although, you know what? Counterpoint, I think Sarah Jessica Parker does find heels very comfortable. As we know, she runs in them very well. Spottings of her around New York, she's always in heels. She loves them. But I'm with you. You know what? I will say, even though it doesn't logistically and practically make sense for these women, one thing I'm glad about is we still have the fashion. It's not as good as it used to be. The costume designer used to be the wonderful Patricia Field. And God, she just kind of defined her own style on that show. And it was just amazing for all of them. Yes. And it's interesting because Patricia didn't want to come back for Just Like That because she wanted to stick with Emily in Paris for which she's a costume designer. And I think that also says a lot. It makes me very sad she chose Emily in Paris instead, but it says a lot.
Emily in Paris is also a bad show. And
it's very bad.
And the fashion is not great either. I would say it's not.
Patricia's not where she used to be, I think.
No, but I mean, it's hard to stay at that level for decades and decades. Like, I get it. Yeah. And so maybe she feels like Emily in Paris is lower pressure, right? I don't know. But I know that it is an important fashion show for Gen Z. Like, they will go to premieres of the show dressed to the nines in their Emily in Paris inspired looks. So maybe it's just that she's really plugged into what Gen Z wants and is giving them that. I don't know. Maybe it's just like not for us. It would be interesting. Like, what was the fashion show for us? So I know that Sex and the City was incredibly influential for people who are now in their 40s and 50s for Gen X, right? And I know like all of my friends that I've met through various ways who are slightly older than I am will quote Sex and the City very earnestly. Like, I have one friend who kind of lived this lifestyle in Toronto, and she was single until she was 38. And she would always quote that Charlotte thing. I've been dating since I was 15. I need a break. And she, like Charlotte, did get married and then did have 2 kids. So very similar trajectory to Charlotte, and was also like a very academic, professionally successful, but really it was prioritizing family. And so it was so influential fashion-wise, lifestyle-wise. Like, it gave people a vocabulary to express their thoughts, I think, honestly. And I'm so grateful that existed for that generation. And I mean, girls might have, for some of people who are millennials, might have given some people, because it was also a very wide show, a way to think about themselves. But it wasn't a great fashion show, nor did it want to be. It didn't aspire to that.
No, I think it was Gossip Girl for us.
No, well, I mean, that's the only show where the fashion was good, so it has to be.
It is. It absolutely is. But Gossip Girl was so seminal for me, and I think a lot of my friends, and I know we talked about this. Go back and check out our wonderful Gossip Girl episode where Sarah does a deep dive on it. We touch on it a little bit, but headbands came up out of nowhere, resurrected from the 90s because of that show. And both Blake Lively's fashion and Leighton Meester's, I think, had such an impact. Like, girls were going to school wearing purses, tights, colorful tights. Like, it was a whole new thing, even if it was
true.
Again, larger than life in a way. But they also, at the time, I was like, wow, fantastic costume designer. I just forgot his name, but he is great. And now it doesn't hold up quite as much. But as you said earlier, it's about how things were at the time. At the time, it was really great. And I feel like it's the same thing with Sex and the City. What's interesting now, too, what is so buzzy each week with each episode is that there will be like these very buzzworthy moments where like Carrie will be wearing a really oblong hat or something else really ridiculous. And it's funny because if you go back to the original show, there were many times she wore something that was also a huge discussion topic, but I don't think they were ever as ridiculous as they are in Just Like That. And in Just Like That, it just doesn't work. But back then she had like the naked dress or the newspaper dress, and those were fashion moments. I don't know that these are fashion moments. Like, there's the moment in, I don't know if it was season 1 or the second, where she wears that massive train in the snow, and it was just ludicrous. I mean, it was a beautiful,
Yeah, the fashion is interesting. Like, the LTC character always looks beautiful and is always well dressed.
She
Her
does.
fashion is very good, and it's also because like that actress is very model-esque, right? Like she's very
stunning.
Yeah, she's stunning and looks really good in avant-garde fashion, right? And not everyone does. Like I don't.
God, no, me either.
So she looks great, and that character, they have not written that character very well, and they don't know what to do with her. But I feel like the actress is so beautiful, and she wears clothes so well that they're like, let's just keep her in and try to figure it out. Like, I do think that fashion wise, they still seem to struggle. And maybe this is part of the plot, but I think that this is just that they haven't figured it out. They seem to struggle with dressing women in their 50s. And like that did become a plot point at one point with Charlotte, who was changing the way she was dressing, right? Where she wanted to wear this belted, tight, body conscious outfit. And then she was worried it didn't flatter her the way it would have in her 40s, right? Like that, because she's now, menopausal, and a lot of women during menopause will report getting sort of bloating, right? And it's just like constant. And then that arc is at the end of the day, she realizes it doesn't matter if I have a bloated belly. And so it's a body positive arc, which I like, but it also kind of gives the fashion designers a free pass not to find things that actually look good on these women at this stage in their life. Like I was kind of like, is this you guys justifying not being able to do your jobs like as a wardrobe stylist?
I'm glad you say it, because Kristen Davis's everything they've got on her this season is just so dull. It's so bland. It's like someone gave up on her specifically. It's really sad. And fashion was, as one might say, if New York was the fifth character, fashion was the sixth. And now I don't think that's the case anymore.
No.
It's really unfortunate. I think that's really sad. But alas, although the backlash has been very intense, and I think will continue throughout the show's run, it does have healthy ratings. And I think that's probably because millennials, but we love nostalgia. And I know, listen, I will watch these women forever and ever. It's the strange irony with this show. It's so bad, but we're all watching. And I think it also does reveal how hard it is for legacy shows to actually grow up. Fans wanted the old vibe back. Critics wanted the show to do better. It kind of ended up stuck in the middle. I think that's the problem. It was trying to satisfy both sides, trying to be relevant without being reactive, warm without being nostalgic, clever without being cynical. But like, cynical is what Satsi was, It's struggling, but we are watching. Sarah, why the hell do you think we're keeping up with it?
They are our friends. We have parasocial relationships with these characters. So it's kind of like, you don't want to abandon your friends. Sometimes it's so bad it's interesting. Like sometimes you're like, what? They did what? Like it's topical. It's like they broke up Miranda and Steve. What? Big died? What? I mean, good thing Big died. He's like, that person is very problematic, that actor, Chris Noth. So
I know.
But they're really good at doing things that make a splash on social media. And I don't even know if they're trying to do it, but it's just like they jump the shark like a couple times a season, I would say. And this way, I mean, if people haven't seen this week's episode, I don't want to spoil it, but there's something that I'm really hoping doesn't happen, that might happen, that I'm really worried. I'm very worried for one of the beloved characters. So
I know.
We'll see. And like that, bringing Aiden back, like I don't understand why you would bring Aiden back. It's like this woman's in her 50s and she's still bouncing back between like, now that Big's dead, it's like she has to go back to Aiden. It's as though these were the only two men in the world, right? That's
I know.
So bizarre.
What? I know. It's odd. And especially because they're not actually playing out that love story anyway right now. It's very odd and disjointed. I will say one thing to its credit. Beforehand, killing off Big to me seemed like such a jump the shark moment. But I will say, I think the show actually handled it quite well. And being a widow at that age, it's not uncommon.
No, not
at all. I actually think it's great that they did it. In retrospect, I think it's great. And I think we get to explore Carrie's grief, especially around a character who has kind of haunted this show for years. I don't think that was bad, but I think unfortunately they haven't quite known what to do with her without Big. It's very unusual.
She doesn't talk about him ever anymore. That's what's so weird.
No,
it's like now
really
that she's
weird.
found Aiden again, which makes you not like her as a character because there's not any complexity. It's like, I just need a man, any man. No, I won't think.
I know.
And it would be so interesting if she could have more sort of conflicted feelings and when she first got together with Aiden and Just Like That, she had like a couple episodes, but like she's now never talks about Big.
I know.
And it's very weird.
It's all just very weird. Okay, take a moment, think about the parts you actually like about the show if you do like them. We're going to go for a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, here's what I gotta say. It's a magical thing. Even when the reboot forgot who it was, the fans still showed up. So what does it mean that we keep watching? We keep dissecting. Sarah and I here are discussing this right now at length. We could probably go on for hours. The show is 25 years old, which is pretty wild. I think maybe it means we're still trying to figure out the same questions this show posed us back in 1998. Can you have it all? Can friendship be forever? Are we really supposed to choose between ourselves and having love? In some ways now, I think these questions can come off maybe a little dated and maybe a little corny, but I think they're realistic, or maybe it all just means we'll never stop looking for ourselves in these four same women with great style and yes, sometimes very questionable taste in men or women. If we're talking about Miranda, who recently slept with a nun, a virginal nun played by Rosie O'Donnell.
That was funny. I found that actually quite funny. I really liked that
episode. Didn't mind it as much as everyone trashed that, but I didn't mind it.
It was very
love the
funny.
Little Rosie O'Donnell. Yeah. Okay, so this brings us to our final segment. You know it well. Hindsight is 2025, where we choose the one moment we might have handled differently if we were the subject of this story.
I shouldn't have done that.
Because we're talking about a series, I'm going to turn it a little bit. Sarah, we discussed it a tiny bit, but what is one plot line you wish had never happened? What is the one that really destroys you? Is it the Steve one?
Yeah. I mean, I would keep Steve and Miranda together. I'm happy. If Cynthia Nixon wants to play queer characters, I hope that she gets the opportunity to play lots of queer characters with depth and who are wonderful and where the writing is good and it makes sense. I just felt it was a betrayal of the show to have Miranda completely abandon Steve. So I don't think I would have done that. But also the Che Diaz character, could they just have written that character a little bit better? Maybe if that character had been better written and felt less tokenistic, I wouldn't have hated the storyline as much and I would have understood why Miranda wanted to leave Steve. But I'm like, you're tempted by this person who's written as just a personified stereotype.
Yeah. You know what? I completely co-sign that. I'll throw in a few other little ones that I've had issues with. I'm sad that Carrie doesn't have her apartment anymore and is kind of passing the baton to someone younger, but that just might be me being, I don't like when things change, but I suppose it's realistic in some ways. And then also, I don't know, I think the Samantha of it all is so complicated, but I like that they brought her back for that one call because I miss her, but I don't think we needed that moment.
No.
And I think it was really poorly inserted. If you remember when they're going to that funeral and then the way that they bring her in is just so messy. And I was just like, this is just awkward because it also doesn't make sense that Samantha would just abandon them all. I almost wish they just wrote her out. I just don't at least be consistent to the character.
You could kill her. That's the thing. I'm not saying you should. Yes, it makes sense and it would be sad, but it's something that they could have done. I mean, they killed Big. This is not a show that's afraid of killing people off, right? That's the thing.
I know. Or just pretend she never existed. I don't know. One other thing. I do wish we got to know their families a little bit more. I mean, we touched on it a little bit with Miranda in the original series, but I feel like we never really quite go there with the others, and I would have loved that with Carrie. Maybe they still will.
Is Charlotte an orphan? That's the weird thing, where it's Charlotte is so into family. You'd think that we would at least at some point have met her family. And I remember in the last season when Brady and Lily hook up, Charlotte, who's actually become, I would say, the most sex positive character other than Seema, but the most sex positive core character. She has that revelation where it doesn't matter if they hooked up because she's like, I had so much sex my mother didn't know about it and everything turned out fine. It's like, wait, you have a mother? Right? This is the first we're hearing of a living mother. Why? Charlotte is a character who's not a jerk. She would be checking in on her mother.
I know.
Why is she never coming to visit the girls, right? Why is she never coming to say hi to Lily? Why is she never coming to say hi to Brock? I just don't get this. And why are they all written as though they just sort of, I don't know, they're written as born sexy yesterday to an extent. I think it's very weird.
I love that. Yeah, they're like aliens who crash landed on Earth just as is. It's so odd when you think about it. Every time they mention they're one of their parents, I gasp out loud. It just doesn't make sense. And I think it could have been such great room for character development and also to have fun, quirky people come in. But they never did it. I hope they still do. I think there's still room for it, even though they're older. Bring in some older parents.
Yeah.
Could be great casting.
We know
opportunities,
Harry's
too.
dad. We know Harry's dad and not Charlotte's and not Carrie's. And I'm not saying I don't want to know Harry's dad. I'm just saying it's bizarre that he's allowed parents and no one else
I know. The men all have parents.
They do.
The women don't.
I know. The men all have parents.
Speaking of which, because now we're just here, I just want to talk about Sex and the City. You know which character I want them to bring back? I want them to bring back Justin Theroux because he played two characters, if you remember. Yep. He was the how best do we put this? He came early.
Yes.
And he had a mom who was so fantastic. His whole family was like, it almost felt like a backdoor pilot because it was so good, his family. And Carrie basically falls in love with the family more than she falls in love with him. And they were so well written and just fantastic and like so like true New York. I don't know. Or maybe John Slattery's would have been a great one to bring back. I wish they had really gotten on a little more. Sarah, do you have someone you'd want to bring back?
Okay, bring back John Slattery, and now he's running for president. Let's make the universe even more elaborate. And that's realistic. So bring him back. I love Kyle MacLachlan, and obviously I don't want Charlotte to be with him, but it would be interesting if he could come back for a little bit. Here's something that could be interesting, an interesting storyline. If Carrie has to date, maybe they meet up and they kind of have a connection. And there's this whole storyline of like, is it a betrayal to go out with your friend's ex when like they're happily with someone else? And it just turns out that you and your ex-husband, your first husband, wanted different things. Like, because he kind of wasn't as committed to having a family. He was sort of like, I'd be happy being child-free and just focusing on our careers, right? So I could actually see older Kyle MacLachlan and older SGP being like, let's just be companions. So that could be an interesting story. I actually feel like bring it back and then deal with the complicated feelings. But, you know, I do think they could get through it.
Oh, I love that idea. Also, Kyle MacLachlan is having such a moment right now. So that could be fun. Well, do you remember at the beginning of the first season of It Just Like That, there were several hints, it seemed, that there was a little bit of sexual tension between Steve and Carrie.
Yeah.
And I remember there were some people who freaked out online that, oh God, please don't take it there. But I remember watching it and thinking, you know what? I don't mind this. They kind of have chemistry.
They do. That could work out too. And that also could have been interesting because Steve is sexy and they've known each other for a really long time. So that could work out. But I do like the idea of her being with one of her friend's exes, especially because in both cases, the friends discarded the ex, but sometimes you still have like the petty feelings where even if you didn't want them and it's been a while, you don't want your friend with them. So that could, I think, be an interesting test for the friend group. Yeah, there's just so many interesting storylines that they don't explore. And I in favor of just having her be in this really complicated relationship with Aiden.
I know. You're totally right. Oh, I love that idea. Gosh, yeah. And does girl code exist when you're older? I mean, I think it probably does, but that would be so fascinating. I love that. Okay, so yeah, listen, you've heard our big spiel on Sex and the City. We still love it. So if you still love it, that's okay. And if you watch And Just Like That every week, we're friends, okay? We do the same thing, me and Sarah.
Exactly.
It wasn't perfect. Okay, fine. But Sex and the City was powerful, was seminal for so many of us. Each time I watch, I relate in a new way. I'm probably going to watch it till I'm in the home. It's going to happen. It made women's lives feel big. It made our choices feel cinematic. And it made brunch feel like a little bit of a religion. I do miss that, you know, when they get together like that. Yeah, we don't have that anymore. But whether you were a Carrie or are a Carrie, a Miranda, a Charlotte, a Samantha, or maybe none of them, because that also applies, it gave you something to hold on to. And just like that, we're still talking about it. I had to watch that in there. I'm sorry.
I am someone who is looking for love. Real love. Ridiculous. Inconvenient. Consuming. Can't live without each other love.
Okay, guys, that's our episode. Thank you for listening. You can listen to more of The Reheat for free on the Seeker app. You can also find the show on the Frequency Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me at _Sadaf Hassan. Sarah, where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me at Sahikian Sarah on Instagram. And if you liked this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us too. And if you would like us to keep growing, we would love for you to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Reheat, where we've got some goods in store for you. Thanks for listening.